In this episode, I speak with Latia Suite, a church leader and clinician. We speak about relationships, self-care, and the internal conversations that we have with ourselves that can impact us getting the results that we want out of life. This is McKenna. I was talking to a friend of mine, my mentor actually, earlier this week, right? About the word dope.
Hope?
Dope, like D-O-P-E.
Uh-huh.
Right. So I like, that's obviously like a slang word that people use. And right. I found myself using the word like, oh, that's dope. And then that person like broke it down like, well, where did that word come from?
Right.
And I was like, it means decent. Like, dope means decent. So
right.
And then they said, well, dope was like a drug, right?
Right. Interesting.
Right? And then it's like,
I've had that same conversation.
Okay, so tell me your perspective about that.
It was hard to answer too, and it was even more awkward for me because it's a word, you know, that everybody's using. But then like we started these T-shirts or whatever at church, and it says God is dope, right? Child. So I'm at a conference, and like one of like the older like pastors or whatever, they was like, so he real cool though. He was like, so what exactly does the shirt mean? I'm like, well, you know what I mean? Like God is good, he's cool. And they was like, but dope, right? I was like, yeah, but not in that context.
Right.
not quite that way.
Right. Because like it's real interesting because dope is a drug, and maybe dope meant like the drug was really good. So that's why like the transition of that word from it being a drug to it being good. It's like so crazy. Like when you sit down and like start thinking about some of the words that we use.
That's right.
And like the origin of them.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that? Do you like? I was like, so I'm like in a quandary. Like, should I not use the word dope?
I know. You know, I think it's like other words. You know, we kind of interpret them and use them the way they fit for that time too. You know, understanding the, you know, that maybe the history or whatever behind it or what it originally meant. But I think, you know, I don't know. I think words are always transforming.
Yeah.
So,
like the N-word.
I mean, we always,
like the N-word.
Yeah, you know, always transforming.
Yeah.
So it depends on how you want to use it. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting.
Very much.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you about a couple of different things.
Okay.
Obviously this climate that we're living in, it's super crazy. But again, it's your mindset, right? It's how you look at it, right?
Right.
So in your role as a clinician, so could you tell us a little bit about what your role is as a clinician?
So as a clinician, so I'm a supervisor. I've you know, degreed in psychology, Virginia State, whoop. And then I got a master's degree in social work, also a master's degree in theology. But my primary job is in social work. And so I've worked with children and families, work with mentally ill. So always kind of talking to children, always talking to families, trying to process things with them. And now I work in a supervisor role, so I'm kind of helping to train others, you know, how to do the same. So,
so have you come across people during this time who are having difficulty with a lot of the changes that are happening in our present society?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. How to really even just cope with it or understand it. Because, I mean, some of it is so new. I mean, in light of COVID, that's one piece of it. And then with just pre-COVID, with everything that was going on and it's still going on. So you kind of got two things kind of happening simultaneously, right?
Right.
The COVID is a pandemic. So it's global, right? And then you start kind of breaking down some of the things that's happening a little bit closer to home. or a little bit closer to your, your own kind of people or whatever, you feel a little differently. But yeah, people are definitely having a hard time adjusting and then saying the same things over and over. And how do you really deal with that? And you ask yourself sometimes, wow, this is the world we're living in now.
Yeah.
We're still living in now, really.
Right. So, like, what are some things that you found were helpful to some of the people that you spoke with to help them to cope?
Doing some interpersonal kind of stuff right now because it's hard to even use your regular outlets. You know what I mean? Like, people cope in so many ways, and a lot of times, especially us as a culture, we cope a lot in gathering. And
Right.
so not being able to do that right now is difficult. We've had, losses and people dying. The first thing we doing is figure out who house we meeting at. I ain't trying to be stereotypical, but you know how it is. Who gonna get the fried chicken and potato salad? Put on some music, start laughing about the person, all that stuff. And you can't do that, right? Just going out, mingling, hooking up with friends for brunch and all that kind of stuff, can't happen. So it's really kind of this whole really self-evaluation kind of time and really digging deeper into what do you really have inside of you, and then, of course, that kind of, depending on who I'm talking to, might shift my hat from my social work role to my ministry role. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. As a minister,
Yes.
Have you found like that there is like a division between church and state in a sense of how we should deal with things?
Sometimes, we're the church and Christianity in general is big on forgiveness. I mean, that's kind of the root of it. Love and forgiveness is the root of it. But that's difficult sometimes when, you either have personal attacks or these things that we're constantly seeing every day on the news, with our Black lives and how it's not as valued, I guess. And so it's hard to then say, oh, love and forgive. And so it's definitely that type of separation, and you want to kind of not do that. So it's tough. It's tough in these times for sure. But yeah, and then what you can say and what you can do, and kind of treading that fine line sometimes with this ever-changing world, and
Yeah. On social media, or also on the news, has been everywhere about the young man that got shot jogging, and it's like this fine line because you want to be informed, you want to know how you can help, but then you also don't want to kind of be re-traumatized in a sense by seeing that over and over again, So it just gets uncomfortable almost. It's like, because I know I found like I want to be supportive, but I really don't want to feed the narrative of it by constantly showing it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Or even seeing it as much. People are sending it to you, and you gotta be careful of how much of that you really take in. I think after a few of them, it's like it's hard. It gets harder to watch it and to still walk away thinking that this world can be better. It can kind of really play some tricks on you. You keep kind of inundating yourself with that. But to also know it's happening, not to be out of touch with reality either, right? And not just ignore it or normalize it because there's nothing normal about it. So still kind of keep it present, but just be careful of how much of it you're taking in, and even where you're getting information, how much of the information you know what's accurate, what's not, all that kind of stuff, because nobody knows everything. So
Right. Right.
wrong is still wrong, but nobody knows the whole picture either.
Yes, that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. And I think a lot of times we jump to conclusions based on that tidbit that we do get,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
But I'm thinking about, because you grew up in Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like Baltimore is a place where there has been a high crime rate over the years,
Absolutely.
right? So this is,
Absolutely.
yeah. So like, this is not a new story, so to speak, for somebody that has come up in that neighborhood or that
Yeah.
area. Because
Yeah.
I don't think you necessarily lived in the heart of it,
Yes.
but
So because for those who might watch this that are from Baltimore, and what I've heard from a mutual friend years ago was that there's a difference between Baltimore County and Baltimore City. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Um, and so, yes, I'm from Baltimore County. But still, having family and being in those areas and traveling and not being but so far from it. It's really only a few miles of dividing line there. But then also, I mean, the news media is covering the whole Baltimore area, and so it doesn't matter what's going on in your little area. Especially when you're younger, you didn't have 100 channels to watch. You
right,
had a
right,
couple
right.
channels and news came on, and you sitting there watching it, and whatever was going on within your surrounding area
It's still gonna
was
affect it.
broadcasted.
Mhm.
And so yeah, you would see it, and now we're seeing even more of the crimes and those kind of things. So yeah, definitely kind of growing up, in the outskirts of that area. Excuse me, having family. Um, you know I've had family, unfortunately, tragic endings, just because of being where they were, and so all that definitely takes an effect. um but yeah, but I definitely was brought up um in a more, I guess, safeguarded
Mhm.
situation, um where two-parent household kind of thing, grandma kind of being right there, um and so just all that encouragement, all that support, all that kind of making sure you stay kind of on that straight and narrow and don't slide too much this way or that way.
Right.
um and then I'm not sure where else we're going with this, but we talk about like words and stuff. It was always, in my household, you speak up, you say what you gotta say, but at the same time, my mother would say, because when I got a little bit too out of hand, she would say, bite your tongue. Don't you go to school talking back to those teachers, because I
Right.
had an issue with that at one point. I confess. And she was like, you bite your tongue.
Right.
I don't want to hear, know? So when it got to disrespect, yes, of course, watch your
Right.
words. But in terms of like speaking up and speaking out, and my mom always said, open up your mouth, make sure you're
Mhm.
speaking clearly, articulate. You want to make sure people understand what you're saying. And I
Mhm.
think that kind of build to what I'm, who I am and what I do today. So I'm always mindful that I always hear her little voice in the back of my head whenever I have to speak.
Like,
So
so that's because that's exactly the direction I was going in. Because I was gonna ask, like, did you feel like it was because you were in the particular area that you were in that is the reason why you didn't, quote unquote, become a statistic, or you just had different feelings or thoughts about life?
yeah, definitely different perspective, different views. Different things were instilled in me, I think, and just that different type of village too. When you see,
Mm,
it also depends on the examples you see. No matter where you are, it depends on the examples. So there's some people that may not have had a good example in their house. So I was privileged enough to have that. But even if they didn't have a good example in their household, they had a neighbor or somebody who they could see that in. They had a church member or a community leader or somebody who they could see that in. And so I had that everywhere, every circle that I was in. There
right.
were kind of good examples. I'm not saying everybody was perfect,
Mm,
but there were great examples to follow, whether in my household or out in the community. And I think that definitely shaped. And then hopefully, like I said, for those who don't have it, they can find it in other ways, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.